Hello. Okay, so for this video, I'm going to talk you through the signposts and kind of get you familiar with the 6 types of signposts. This isn't going to be the only time that we talk about the 6 signposts. I'm definitely going to as I read, I will be filling out the reading tracker as well as I read these chapters with you guys. And next week, when I see you and we talk about how the reading's going, I will definitely be checking in with you and seeing which ones you're noticing and which ones you're understanding, which ones you're not, and we'll be talking about them. So I know this isn't the best way to be able to understand the signposts, and so this isn't a one and done thing. This is just a way to introduce you to the signposts so you know what you're going to be trying to look for when you do the reading today and when you do the reading on Friday, since I won't be here. Okay, so again, we talked about this on Friday, but a lot of times English teachers, they want you to read deeper into the text and they want you to go deeper when they ask you questions. But we don't always tell you how to do that. And so this is the way that we've chosen to get you to learn how to do that, okay? And so this is the protocol that we're using. I think this is a good, easy protocol to help you notice what's important. So let's just jump right into the PowerPoint. We're not going to cover all of it. I just want to introduce the 6 types, and I want to tell you what you're going to notice and what types of questions you should be answering, and then when you're analyzing, what you should find out. And there's going to be some extra things on here for you to do, and then we'll see where we're at when I come back next week. Okay, so let's just jump in here. So this is important. If you'll just kind of let me point out the title of this presentation. It's Notice and Note. Okay, so it really doesn't do any good just if you notice, hey, that's a signpost. But you also need to notate it down, right? That's where the power comes in. If you are doing the reading tracker and if you're actually like notating it down, because as you go through the book, you're going to really be seeing what's popping out and where the deeper meaning from the book is coming from, and that's where the power of the signpost comes in. Okay, so what is a signpost? The best way that I can describe this, and I think you guys will all have your own analogies or your own things that come to your mind, but when I was a little girl, I was a Girl Scout, and we would go on nature walks, and they taught us how to, when we would go on nature walks, to mark the path so the people that came behind us, or like if the people that like ever came on that certain nature walk behind us would want to go on that same nature walk, that they would be able to follow our nature walk, right? That they would be able to turn right where we turned right, that they would be able to notice the plant that we noticed and stop and like study it. They would be able to turn left, and if they came to a fork in the path, that they would be able to know which way we went by how we marked the path in our nature walk. And they taught us these nature markings, like how to mark our path, not using paper and like markers and like thumbtacks, right? But like using these special nature markers. And I think about that in the way that we were leaving signposts for the people that came behind us to stop and go, this must be important. And the people that came before us must have wanted us to kind of stop and notice this, right? And so that's kind of what the signposts are in this novel, right? There are 6 different types of signs that we should kind of sit back and go, wow, I think this is an important idea. I think I should take a minute, write this down, and kind of think about this for a second. And not only should I think about it for a second, but I should kind of notice and categorize it, because it's kind of the same type of signpost that I saw back a few chapters. And I think these two things kind of correlate, and they're important because of this idea, right? And so you can already see, even if you didn't have a book, just by that example, you can see how somebody who isn't used to really like reading and going deep, just by this idea of like notating signposts throughout a book, you know, after a few pages of this, you're really going to have a lot of deep ideas, right? Like, hopefully you can see that. So, and I think then I've just answered, why do we have them, right? I just answered both questions in that. So we'll have time to talk about this, and I want to get your guys' ideas, but obviously this isn't the best platform for that. I'm just going to check my time, because the last time I did this, I went over time and I didn't get them all explained. Okay, so the 6 signposts are here, but we're going to talk through them. And they all have to do with what's going on with the character or the book. So they're not necessarily what you're thinking, right? So I just want to make that clear. So make sure that as you're noticing, that you're noticing like the actual character. So the first one is contrast and contradictions. So this is when you're reading and the character says or does something that's opposite what he or she has been saying or doing all along, okay? And you should stop and ask yourself, why is the character doing that? So, or that should kind of pop into your head. So if you're reading along and you just notice, or out of the blue, it pops into your head, what the heck? Then that's a contrast and contradiction signpost. And so you should stop and go, oh my gosh, I think that's maybe a signpost. And then you kind of back up and go, oh yeah, they haven't been acting like that before, and now all of a sudden they're acting that way, and why, right? And the analysis comes in because it could help you make a prediction about the plot or the conflict. Okay. Now each signpost is going to be represented the same way in this slideshow. So you're going to have the definition and what you should stop and ask yourself, and then the analysis. Then you're going to have an example, okay, but you can read that on your own. And then you're going to have videos that show that contrast and contradiction from some of the things that you're going to recognize. You can always come back and watch these on your own, and I'm going to come back and watch these on our own, so that when we have a class discussion about these things, if I want to use an example from this, I can. But we're not going to go over that now, because again, it's a video, like if this were online school. Okay, the second one is aha moment. And this is when you're reading and not you have an aha moment. Okay, not you have an aha moment. This is when the character has an aha moment. And all of a sudden they figure something out. Okay, so the keywords or phrases that you should be reading when you notice a character having an aha moment is they are saying, oh my gosh, I just realized something. Or they're saying like, I suddenly understand that now, or it just occurred to me, right? The questions you're asking yourself is, how might this change things? Or what's going to happen now? And the analysis part is, if the character just figured out a problem, you've probably just learned about the conflict. If the character understood a life lesson, then you might just have uncovered one of the themes. Okay, so that's the aha moment. And again, we have an example that you can read on your own. And then we have the text videos examples. Okay, so I'm going to check my time. Okay. Then next, we have tough questions. So this is when you're reading and the character asks himself or herself a really tough question. So this could be like when they're kind of at a crossroads and they don't know which way to go. This could be like if something's happened and they don't know who they can trust. what you would stop and ask yourself is, what does this question make me wonder about, and what are the alternatives? And the analysis will tell you more about the conflict, and it will give you ideas about what's going to happen later in the story. It will also kind of unveil the internal conflict that the character is going through. There's your examples, and then there's your video examples. Next, you have words of the wiser. This is when you're reading and a character who's usually older, probably like a parent or a teacher or an older brother or sister, takes the main character aside and gives some serious advice. Okay, so that's what's going to happen in the novel. You should notice that, and you should be asking, what's the life lesson and how might it affect the character? You might also notice, like, how is the character receiving that advice? Okay. And then whatever the lesson is, you've probably found another theme or an extension of the theme that you found before. Here's an example of words of the wiser, and then here's some video clips example. And then the next one is again and again, which you will find this in your reading today. This is when you're reading and you notice a word, phrase, object, or situation that's mentioned over and over and over. And you should be asking yourself, why does this keep showing up and again? Like, you're just going to notice that this idea keeps coming up. And like I said, it can be a word, a phrase, an object, but it just keeps showing up. And you're like, wait, this thing must be important. And you may not always know, especially at the beginning of the novel. You're like, this is coming up. I don't know what it means yet, but you're going to notice it and you're going to notate it down. This thing keeps coming up. I don't know what it means. Right? But it's going to tell you either about the theme or the conflict. It also might be foreshadowing something that will happen later. So that's again and again. Here's an example of again and again that you can read later, and then here's some video texts. And then the last one is a memory moment. There's also an example of this in your reading today. This is when you're reading and the author interrupts himself or herself to like the current action, okay? They interrupt the current action to tell you a memory that happened like before. So they interrupt the action and they say, this is what happened when I was 9, blah, 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 okay? And so your questions that should be coming to your mind is, why are they telling me this? Why is the character going through this memory? And you're going to ask, why is this memory important? With your analysis, the answers to this will tell you about the theme, conflict, or might foreshadow. Also, the character might be remembering this because it might tell them something important. And they also might be remembering it because it's something else that's troubling them. So that's the last type of signpost. And then at the end, so there's another example, there's some text for memory moment, and then at the end of the presentation, there are some more videos for all different signposts, and these are all links to in the blue. So when you get to you can look at the actual slide presentation I put in Canvas, but here again are all 6. So when you're reading, you should be watching for all 6 of those types. And again, like I said, they're just things that you're going to look for. Now, as you're starting out, you might get to one and you're like, I think this is a contrast and contradiction, or I think this is an aha moment, but I don't know what it means yet. I don't know what's going on in the novel. I don't know enough yet, but I think this is a signpost, and that's okay. You can totally put, I think this is a signpost. I think this is an again and again, or I think this is a memory moment, but I don't know what it means, right? It's okay that you don't know what it means at the beginning of the novel because you don't have enough context to be able to explain why the narrator or why it's happening. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So that's it for today.